Okay, so let's start the trip. And first of all, congratulations on your 1 year anniversary.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cycling to work. I'll be asking you about that on our our journey.
It might be hard to hear, but we'll try our best.
Yeah, I mean, if we can ride side by side, then it's easier to talk. But we'll.
It's the single lane motorcycle. So
Yeah. Okay. Anyway.
So it might be a bit hard, but let's see if we can do.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Let's go.
This is quite busy in the morning, most likely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's about 7 a.m. in the morning on a Thursday morning. Yep. I can see you're also wearing bright colors like myself to be seen.
Figure this out because when I first started cycling, like I didn't know anything.
Ah.
I didn't really know anything.
Right.
I like to jump up here.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Oh, on this one, yes.
I'll be there, but I think you can go with him.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
All the good tricks.
Yeah, but I didn't really have good bike lights and everything too.
Ah.
Then the first time through a dark tunnel, I just went to have one and bought the brightest light I could get.
Okay.
Watch out the grain covers.
Sure. Yes. The killer grills, as I like to call it.
This is my cut. So this works really hard to stop even if you're pedestrian. The only way to really do it is to sort of do a sort of legal U-turn.
Right.
Because otherwise you can't really, you try to do the legal U-turn, you just get to the far right lane and it's very dangerous.
Okay. Yeah. Oh wow. More killer grills here.
So what I do is I went up this spot, try to push it up, there, get there,
Yeah.
then I'll turn right.
Okay, great.
This road doesn't mess.
Yeah. But at least there's this center divider.
Yes.
Okay, we can go.
Okay, let's go.
So that's quite helpful. If there's no center divider, then you are really.
No, this I tried to cross as a pedestrian cross.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Cool.
So it will be a right turn ahead.
Okay. You twist and turns before the long straight journey.
This is the small local road first. And enjoy it first.
Yeah.
Because once we are on the federal highway, straight all the way to the highway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh. Car from behind.
Okay, so afterwards the second lane on the left. Until the pedestrian crossing.
Right.
Then we're going to use the pedestrian crossing to get onto the PJ bike lane.
Yes.
Yeah. So from there, that connects to the federal highway motorcycle lane.
Okay. I see.
Tough work, yeah? Filming and cycling at the same time.
Oh, it's okay.
Okay, so left here, and then we slowly drift. Because a lot of cars are going to exit left here, so
okay.
what I do is I drift.
Yeah, I follow you.
I do this,
Yeah.
push a button. But this good light's really, really good. It
Okay.
changes in a second.
Yes, I have one of those lights as well on my way. Because
I really love this light.
yeah. Just have to be careful of those kind of people that cross anyway. Yeah. Right. This is the official bike lane in PJ. Okay. Okay. I see. But is it like a loop or a loop? Okay. And is it used?
I just think some people use it, but I'm the biggest user, I think, already.
You're the biggest user, okay. Yeah. Because the problem is if it doesn't really link to side roads, then...
Like, I use it because trying to get to the right-hand side of this road is really hard. So, so it's the best way for me to get follow the right-hand side.
Right, yeah. I see. Yeah, it's a start. I mean, that's how it begins.
Yeah.
With a few cycle lanes and then...
I can see the potential here, so it's quite really... like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
Button's too far away this time, so what I do is, because these cars in here won't try to turn right.
Yeah.
So
that's probably true, right?
Otherwise, if it's too busy today, I can just go press the button.
Right.
If no one's going to exit right, let's go.
Yeah, let's go. Because if the exit...
Down onto the highway.
Oh, onto the highway. Ah, okay. Aha, this is where it starts. Okay.
So now I go to the road shoulder.
Right.
And then we'll go to the motorcycle shoulder now. So you get the people on the motorcycle now.
All right.
You think it allows you to cycle really quickly?
Yeah.
That's why I can cycle amazing distances.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because everyone's going to work.
Yeah. That's right.
I want to cycle
Right. Yeah, I can hardly hear you.
So thanks, Eugene, for taking me along on your commute.
Thanks for joining.
and what inspired me to reach out to you was actually that I've been a commuter myself, and I have this bicycle commuting channel, and people are always quite impressed when I tell them I have a 9-kilometer commute. And then I saw on one of these WhatsApp groups we're on that your commute is more like 23 or 24 kilometers long. So I thought that's amazing. I would love to document that and show to people that almost whatever distance you have to work is not necessarily a hindrance to bicycle if you have the willpower and the fortune of a workable road. So thanks for bringing me along. And since it was so noisy along the federal highway, I decided that for the first time on my podcast over 10 years that I'm doing this interview after the fact. So we are on Zoom now, and I'm just here to record the audio. So I would like to ask you some questions about your commute to work.
Sure.
So I'm curious to know how you got started on this idea of commuting to work, since it's such a long distance of 23 kilometers.
Well, I used to be a bike commuter before I moved back to Malaysia. Like back when I was in uni, like for me, cycling, like transportation, everything was was like easy and quite effortless. I was living in Melbourne, Australia at one point. When I came back to Malaysia, it seemed like any other I wouldn't be able to do anything but drive again because because of the industry I work in, most of the places I would end up working in all industrial areas.
Hmm.
So for me, I didn't even consider the possibility of cycling to work until one lecture was a series of things. Like first, there was a time when I found out that other cyclists were also using the federal highway motorcycle lanes. So
Okay.
I decided to give that a go one day to see whether it was possible. And I gained some confidence and learned how they work. Then
How did you find
afterwards,
how did you find out that other people were cycling on the federal highway? Because when we went, I didn't see any other cyclists, so it must be very few, unless they do
oh
it
yeah,
as recreation in the weekends or something.
yeah, I think it's mostly recreational cyclists. Like because I see like posts on Facebook and so on.
Hmm.
So I know that people do it. So I know that it is theoretically possible. And one of the things that's spurred me um, into considering this option is like joining the bicycle group that we're both in,
Yep.
and learning that yeah, there are other people who who actually do commute by bicycle. So I decided to just study my route and see whether it is theoretically possible for me to do so. And then um, I looked at the distance. I was like, maybe it's too long. But I had another. I have had another friend who was cycling like part of the week. He didn't cycle every day, and I thought, yeah, maybe I can't do it every day, but maybe I might consider doing it once a week, as he had done. So I tried this route actually a couple of times before I finally decided to cycle to work. So for about almost 2 or 3 months, every Saturday, I would I would just test this route out in the morning and do the full routes, like cycle there. At that time, I wasn't quite fit enough yet to do the full route, so I would cycle to my office, and then I would struggle to get back. So I would just because it's a weekend, I can bring my bike onto the train. So I would head back to Subang, and
Hmm.
then I would just have the train take me home the rest of the way. So
Wow.
I did this for a couple of weekends in a row. Then at one point in time, I thought no, it was one Monday. I thought, you know what, I'm going to try it today, and that was the first time I cycled to work after that.
And did you make it back as well that day, or you?
Oh yeah, actually, I think it's easier because I have the whole work day to space up the two rides. So I'm not doing almost 50 kilometers in one go. I'm doing
Hmm.
just half of that, and so it was a lot more doable than trying to do both ways at the same time. Um, during a Saturday morning.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Because actually, after our ride, I cycled back to Bangsa.
You managed it.
Yeah, so I had it back to back, and then it also started getting warmer, and it was I could feel it in my legs.
But I learned from you never to look down on the Brompton again. Because you were amazing.
Yeah. No, but that's I mean, I think this underscores that it's quite a long commute because you sort of had to train yourself up to do the distance and sort of not being sure you could make it back on the same day kind of thing, right? Early days, and then you got in better shape. So if I recall from our conversation, you also said you're not cycling every day. It's only certain weekdays.
Oh yeah,
Can you talk
yeah,
about why that is?
oh yeah. Yeah. So I what I found, because okay, there are some days where I might need my car at work because I might need to go pick something up and so on near the office. But the other reason was because I have tried cycling 2 days in a row, and when I do cycle 2 days in a row, I find myself just really, really tired and exhausted on the second day. Like when I get home, I don't feel like cooking. I don't feel like doing anything. So I've decided to kind of alternate. So I would if I cycle one day, I would definitely rest the other day. So I would tweak my week based on that. Like if it rains in the morning, I would skip that day and then I would do the next day instead, and so on. So
Yeah.
it's mainly exhaustion and tiredness.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to add one point from your previous, I think that oh yeah, actually, I think I'm actually quite lucky in that the 24 kilometers actually doesn't feel that bad. Like maybe not as bad as maybe your 9 kilometer commute, because I don't have any junctions to look out for. All I have to do is just pedal. So I can zone out. I can relax, and it's not mentally stressful.
Yeah.
That's a good thing about route. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, on that point, I had an amazing experience riding with you, because it's the first time in Malaysia that, or certainly in KL, that I've had this experience of just cycling continuously without any junctions or any traffic lights or any mixing with cars. Um, and that's so to me, this was like an amazing piece of bicycle infrastructure that I sort of discovered after so many years.
And actually, I have a lot of comments from like my colleagues, work colleagues, and then like everybody I know. Like, no, they tell me, "Oh, isn't it unsafe?" and so on. Like, I tell them, like, it's actually much safer to cycle on a segregated motorcycle lane where you're cycling alongside motorcycles versus cycling on the main road with cars, because the weight difference between a motorcycle and a bicycle, and the weight difference between a bicycle and a car is really, really big. So I feel safer even like next to motorcycles, but that's also just experience, because I am quite an experienced commuter cyclist, so I don't panic if like someone passes me on the side.
Yeah, I found it a little bit unnerving. I mean, just as a general sense, that as a slow cyclist, where we were maybe going about 30 kilometers an hour, which is relatively fast for cycling, but still in the universe of motorbikes, it's slow. So they would maybe come with twice that speed. Um, and because it is a relatively narrow, I mean, you have two lanes, but if we ride next to each other sort of tight, the motorbike can't pass,
Oh
right? So
yeah.
there's not a lot of extra space. We really had to ride single file.
Mhm.
So I found it a little bit unnerving to have these motorbikes pass so close by you at such a high speed, because I have no control of that. If they somehow I don't know, do a WhatsApp or distracted by the phone or whatever can happen, and they hit you from the back. That's always my biggest fear.
Defensive riding wise, I actually choose to occupy the left half of the left lane
Yeah.
for a very specific reason, because there's actually on the motorcycle lanes over here, there's actually a mixture of different types of riders. They are fast riders and they are slow riders. So I don't know whether your video managed to capture any, but like sometimes you get slow riders, like they may be like older folks, and I know maybe parents of kids and so on. They ride slower, and then there are some motorcyclists that ride faster. Generally, most of the really, really fast motorcyclists I find would take the highway, but sometimes because they don't like the motorcycle lane. Motorcycle lane has speed humps, they have kings left and right. So a lot of the fastest motorcyclists are selected against on the motorcycle lane, but you still have faster motorcyclists. So what I find is really, really important is to leave the right half of the left lane free, because what I find happens is that these faster motorcyclists would try to push the slow motorcyclists. Like they would try to overtake the slow motorcyclists. So if I do not leave a kind of like a safe refuge for the slow motorcyclists to kind of like pass me, so that the faster motorcyclists can pass them, then like you start getting conflicts in the road. So that's why I find it quite the defensive cycling wise, I choose to occupy the left lane of the left half of the left lane.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense. Have you had any sort of close calls or any motorbikes that have sort of almost
Oh,
hit you? Broke
I've
you?
been
Yeah.
I've been clipped once before,
Yeah.
like knocked against like my pedal, my right wing, my pedal once, but I didn't lose balance at that point, so I was okay there.
Oh,
So generally, I found most of the time I'm pretty okay because people don't really want to hit you too, and I'm quite obvious too.
yeah.
So and so what I find is like just stay out of the way. Most people are too busy with their morning commute to really bother. Maybe you might have. I've had positive and negative experiences like in terms of people uh who do pay attention to you. Like on my right, I have like the same one or two guys who kind of recognize me because I use this road so often. Like they'll just give me a thumbs up as they go past, or they'll do this something like that so that as they go past, I can see them like thumbs up. Uh, in terms of negative, I have had like some people who just start horning and shouting as they go past because like promotion like this is the motorcycles road, get off the road. But because they overtake me so quickly, the interaction is only like few seconds long at most. So I have had a mixture of like responses. Like I've had some people who were like oh no, I recognize you. I see you all the time. They give me a wave, a thumbs up as they go past, or just
Hmm.
give yeah, a beep beep and then go past. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting because correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that this uh, motorcycle lane or bicycle lane that we're riding on was actually meant for slower traffic. So it was essentially more like a bicycle lane originally. But of course now it's basically almost 100% motorbikes riding on it. So who, I mean, historically speaking, who was this lane made for? Do you know?
Well, from what I understand, like because this lane was built for the federal highway, which is I think I don't know whether it's the first or one of the oldest highways in Malaysia. So the federal highway eventually had rules that deliberately segregated a whole bunch of other traffic, like slow traffic. I don't know whether you've seen those Malaysian signs where they say like no bullock carts and
Yeah.
no horse-drawn carts. Like
Yes.
so, along with that, they also exclude bicycles as one of the vehicles that aren't allowed on the federal highway itself. So they did build this. They did build this um the motorcycle lane the for slow vehicles, so including bicycles, including motorcycles later on. But this road was designed for slow vehicles, and because of that, the gradients are quite gentle, and it's designed for a maximum speed of I think like 60 kilometers an hour or something like that. Like that
Uh,
is that. So the build design is has that in mind, and so the curves are kind of like gently gently turning.
okay. So there's no specific user. It's just whoever is less than 60 kilometers an hour can ride there.
And whoever and like yeah, the vehicles that weren't allowed on the highway anymore too.
Yeah. Okay. And do you have an impression of the motorbikes, the fast ones? How fast do they go on the lane? Do you have any idea?
Um, generally, I would say I would say the fastest bikes maybe might go above 60 kilometers an hour, but it depends on the section too, because there are many sections of the of the lane of the motorcycle lane that you wouldn't be able to go that fast. There are some sections with lots of speed bumps where I can actually overtake a motorcycle easily because they have to slow down pretty completely, and I would just I can just fly over speed humps because I'm on a bicycle.
Yep. I know that. I can also take cars when there's speed bumps because you can just stand up on the pedals, right? On a bicycle. Yeah.
Yeah, and you
Uh,
can use your legs as shock absorbers. Yeah.
exactly. Um, yeah. Okay. Because I thought I mean I thought it was amazing to have this federal highway and this bicycle lane that seemingly goes on forever. I mean we got off at Shah Alam, but I think it continues to Klang, right?
Yeah, pretty much, but it's not. as perfect afterwards. Like I think to cross into Klang, you have to go. You have to go through an intersection. There isn't like the flyover as
Oh,
you have another. Yeah, just to cross the boundary into Klang. Then the motorcycle lane continues for a little bit until you reach Klang town itself.
I see. Okay.
But yeah, it is possible to go all the way to Klang.
Yeah, I'll definitely test that out probably in the weekend one day.
I have taken I've actually gone up to Berkeley, which is just before Klang. So like there's a traffic light, and then you had just follow the vehicles across the traffic light. So you have to stop at that point.
Yeah.
Then you continue on. Then I've used that point to exit into Berkeley. So that's like almost to Klang.
Okay. And
Yeah.
that whole stretch, I mean, you get off this protected bicycle slash motorbike lane, but you are not left stranded in any intersections. There's some traffic lights and so on. Or
Yeah, there are traffic lights. So it's basically because it's the highway has a flyover, and
yeah.
then there's like an exit junction.
Yep.
So that is exactly where it drops you off. I think a lot of the federal highway intersections used to be like that too. Like we went past Jalan Templar, the Jalan Templar Junction.
Yep.
So that's the one with the really cool looking bridge. That bridge I think is new. So I think before that bridge was put in place, it was kind of like a similar junction for motorcycles too. So that has been kind of like built. So the infrastructure has been improved. Has also been improved to some extent too. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because what I really liked about the federal highways was not so much those bridges. I mean, it's great they're there, but what I really liked was that whenever you have a crossing road to the federal highway, then the motorbike or bicycle lane pulls a bit to the side and then goes through a tunnel of that crossing
Oh,
road. So
oh yeah.
so you are not you don't have to climb up a very tall bridge or something. It's pretty sort of pretty much
Oh yeah. The grade is
a
perfect. Yeah. Yeah.
very even, not a lot of up and down, very easy ride.
You can actually, I think, tell the age of the crossings based on how bicycle friendly it is. Like the oldest crossings, like this just from build design, you can see like those tend to be really bicycle friendly. Then I think as newer intersections were built over time, like new highway intersections, they start to get less and less bicycle friendly. So example would be like the NPE junctions. That one makes you do a really big climb.
Yes.
And then there's the other one. What's the other one that I wanted to say? Yeah, so I think around Batu Tiga, where there's a whole bunch of maze of flyovers. Now, like that one has a whole bunch of really steep climbs or descents that you do.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And actually on that topic, I wanted to ask you as well because I realized on the way back there was a section of this motorcycle way slash bicycle lane that was not there. Or I guess they're doing some construction, and then during that time they just rope in that area, and you have to find another solution. So that was
Actually, it looked like they did try to give us a detour at some point because you went through the LRT construction site same as I did, right?
All right, I think so. Yeah.
That if you right on the inside there, you will see a whole bunch of and then especially when that's the junction that takes you into Shah Alam, right? I think that takes you down the tunnel and the green leafy part.
Yeah.
If you look at your feet, there's like a painted bicycle on it. So I looked it up. Apparently, the motorcycle lane was officially recognized as a bicycle lane at some point in time.
Okay.
Like I looked like many years ago, and so it looked like there was an attempt when the LRT construction started for them to provide this like alternative route that's painted onto the road itself. But it seemed like at a certain point in time it was just lost before I started cycling. So I don't know when this happened, but I could see like painted bicycles, like as I ride through the construction site, you can see a painted bicycle on the road itself.
Yeah.
Like on the remnants of the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But good intentions, but bad execution maybe.
I think it's just. I think it just got lost over time. Like when maybe somebody decided, oh, there's not many, there are not that many cyclists using anyway. So let's shut the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on that note, I know that if you are a cyclist and you come from KL and you go up the River of Life, I guess, where the bicycle lane sort of starts, connecting with the federal highway, then they sort of concreted over this bicycle lane connection, so you actually cannot connect to go to PJ and Shah Alam and Klang.
Like the Bangsa South here, right? The Bangsa South development.
Yes. So that's that's a bit of a tragedy.
Yeah, that's a big bummer. And actually, it actually went viral. I think at some point,
Yeah.
there were, like a whole lot of people were going like, oh, "What are these cyclists doing on the federal highway?" They show cyclists cycling on the federal highway.
Yeah.
And like I know that I know the reason why the cyclists are on the federal highway next to Bangsa South, because the motorcycle lane just disappears over there.
Yeah.
And the only way to get back onto the federal highway is to kind of like jump 2 lanes of traffic to the right on the federal highway, because if you stick to the far left, it takes you up into the NPE. So you have to jump right one more time.
Wow.
And then that road takes you up into Bangsa South itself. So you have to jump one more to stay straight. So it's not really bicycle friendly place, or motorcycle friendly, actually. I would argue, because like a knee-jerk reaction I find for many Malaysians is that oh no, the motorcycles on the highway, why, like especially car drivers, and why aren't they using motorcycle lanes? I think a lot of car drivers don't realize, and I didn't realize until I started cycling on the motorcycle lane, is that the motorcycle lane just disappears, like here and there.
Yes.
Like they would just shut the motorcycle lane all of a sudden, and then just send every single motorcycle up onto the road. Like for me, like if you take you went through the LRT construction site, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's possible for a bicycle, but if you are a motorcyclist, what it does is that that bit there will send you straight onto the highway. So that bit, going through if you I know you've been from this part, but if you go through the tunnel, past the Shah Alam, that junction, and then onwards, it doesn't return you back onto the motorcycle lane until the Gardenia, like opposite the Gardenia factory. So that at that point, that's when the motorcycles are able to rejoin the motorcycle lane again. So I think this has also the effect of kind of like really, really unnerving and discouraging, like really inexperienced motorcycle riders.
Yes.
Because like the highway is a scary place.
Yes.
And the highway, defensive riding on the highway is different from defensive riding on the motorcycle lanes. If you're on the highways, like another thing that I think a lot of car drivers will say is like, oh, why are the motorcycle lanes riding between 2 lanes of traffic? Because you, like, I also didn't realize this until I started cycling often, because that is actually the safest place to be. Yep. If you try to stick on the far left, what you have is you come into conflict with really, really fast moving exiting vehicles, because the exits on the highway are really fast.
Yep.
So the safest place to be is actually to the right of any exiting vehicles.
Yes.
So, but like the good thing is that I don't have to do that. But I, like, as a car, because I'm also a car driver part of the time too. So because of that, I think I find I'm slightly more understanding of like how like the motorcyclists have to defensive ride too.
Yeah, that's right. It helps to know the mode of transport before you start criticizing others, because a lot of things become apparent when you bicycle that you might not think of as a car driver. But on that note, I mean, I just think it's such a shame, both for the motorcyclists, but especially for the cyclists, that you have these sections of the federal highway that are suddenly blocked off. So the motorbikes, okay, they have a choice to go get onto the federal highway, but that's not a choice or realistic choice for cyclists.
There are plenty actually on the route that we took. There were a few too that I think you just missed out on one. There for a couple of months there was a landslip next to the Subang Jaya station, so that caved in like half the motorcycle lane. So so what the authorities did was they placed a barrier at the start of that diversion and sent the motorcycles onto the highway itself. And I, as a cyclist, chose to carry my bike over the barrier and cycle on the other half of the motorcycle lane that was still around.
Right.
What I found was that a lot of motorcycle, at some point, someone pushed the barrier aside, and motorcyclists continue using the motorcycle lane that's reduced to one lane now. And I also took advantage of that. So that's also a key point for me, because I find that if somebody went to the trouble of getting off their bike and push the barrier away, they are really valuing safety, safety of a segregated lane over going onto the highway, because for them it's a really big difference. There's another thing I think we both saw. There's a tunnel opposite the right in front of the Empire Shopping Center.
Yep.
That one is completely dark, right?
Yes.
And it's the whole reason why I went to Decathlon and bought the brightest light I could find, because the light in that tunnel actually it occasionally works. They would fix it, and then after a heavy rain, it would just go dark again. I have a colleague at work who also rides a motorcycle to work.
Yeah.
And so, she told me that the only reason why she's on the highway on that section is because she didn't want to go through a dark tunnel.
I see.
But for me, I decided that trade-off, I would much rather, because I'm not fast enough, I would much rather cycle through a complete pitch black tunnel than to go onto the highway itself. So that's another point that's also dangerous-ish. Yeah. So those are the 2 points in the Klang Valley on my route.
Is it even? Do you know if it's legal to cycle on the federal highway?
Actually, this came up in the news recently. There was a point when micro mobility vehicles got a whole lot of media attention. Yep. Because there was a bunch of guys who on the e-scooters, the e-scooters that were cycling on the road that were on the road in Putrajaya, and there was big backlash against it. Then after that, I think somebody else posted pictures of the cyclists on the federal highway in front of Bangsa South.
Yep.
So there was this thing that came out, and people questioned the legality of this. So I was also pretty interested in that, because I think that was around the time when that was around the time before I started cycling.
Right.
So because I for me, if it wasn't legal, if I wasn't sure whether it's legal, I don't think I would have taken the risk to try it, because I wouldn't. It's not I'm interested in maybe reducing my carbon footprint. I'm interested in my health, cycling more. I'm interested in this kind of things, but not enough to get in trouble with the law. So So later on, I think a lot of people were writing in the newspapers, getting lawyers and stuff like that. And then I think the outcome of it was that I think because bicycles are not powered vehicles, they fall outside the jurisdiction of the JPJ. But at the same time, they kind of just say take care of your own safety, I think the separate part was, I think you're okay on the federal highway, but not Kersas, for example, because Kersas is a privately owned highway. So they specifically, even though I heard that the motorcycle lane on Kersas is even nicer to cycle on, but apparently that's one thing that has been outrightly said to be not allowed. So I haven't tried it myself.
Yeah, I remember reading about 1,000 ringgit fines for cycling on the highway, but whether that applies to private highways or federal highway or all highways or only some, I'm not sure. But I think apart from the fines, like you say, we have an interest in saving the carbon footprint, but we also have an interest in survival, right? So so
Like
that
it's not worth dying for, but like
that's
I
right.
think it's hard for them to really, you can say, ban bicycles outright, because like it's not so much in this era anymore. Like we talked a couple of decades ago, the bicycle was one of the main forms of transportation. Like my own grandmother, like as a laborer, she's like with a whole bunch of like other women, like through chaos, like from where they work to where they live.
Mm, yes.
So this was the bicycle was normal. Like, and even today, you would still see like an old uncle, like laden with like goods and so on, who will who will cycle where it's safe. And if there isn't a safe way to do it, sometimes you might see them do it on the margins of the highway. And I think
Mm,
that's why it's sort of slightly, it's kind of tolerated too, because there's no, like, these people don't have any other option to.
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think the way forward should be trying to make it safer for the most vulnerable users,
For
rather than
sure.
like,
For
yeah,
sure.
rather than like force you to the margins.
So on that topic, and getting back to the federal highway specifically,
Yep.
because like I said, I thought it was not that great an experience because you had these fast passing motorbikes. So I'm curious to hear your opinion on if there was a bit of extra budget, how could we make this a better experience and safer experience, both for cyclists and for motorbikes to
Oh,
coexist?
this is a topic I'm really, really passionate about,
Oh, good.
actually, because yeah, because I and I think this is where I differ from most of the cycling community too, because I don't know whether you remember, but a couple of years ago there was like a call by some cyclists. They say, why don't we close off the federal highway motorcycle lane on weekends and let only cyclists cycle on it?
Mm,
And I was thinking, this is probably one of the most tone deaf things you can say, I think, because generally, I think motorcyclists get a too bad a reputation in Malaysia. Like, you can say no one's really fighting for their cause, because on one hand, you have the government and you have car drivers saying, get the motorcycles off our road and so on. And then you have the cyclists, and well, largely recreational cyclists, who kind of like say, oh no, we want the motorcycling. What I find that is what I find that kind of like, I guess, sadish about that is that generally most motorcyclists are they are commuters,
yeah.
they're using the motorcycle as a cheap way to get to work and back. This is the cheapest form of transportation. And the dynamic in Malaysia is different in that most bicyclists are not commuter cyclists.
Mm,
Like, we are one of the rare exceptions.
yeah.
So most cyclists in Malaysia are recreational cyclists, and
Yes.
so for them, like, they say, oh yeah, closing it off on weekends sounds like a decently good idea. But I
Mm,
think that also kind of ignores the idea that actually many people do have to work on weekends too, and
yeah.
generally these are poorer people, not richer people, who have
Yeah.
to work on weekends.
I agree.
So it becomes this kind of classist kind of thing, I think.
Mm,
And so, like, for me, I think I'm all for trying to encourage uh, bicycle commuting, especially since, okay, like, you say motorcycles are cheap, bicycles are even cheaper. So that reduces the barriers to more people. And if you make it safer, it's not just daredevils like, us willing to, weave in traffic. It's like even the common person, like, maybe one day you can have like Denmark and Amsterdam, where you have like, the Netherlands, where you have normal people cycling.
correct.
But I find that any solution that does so shouldn't at the same time push the motorcycles off, because, like, if anything, we're trying to reduce the number of people who use their cars to get to work and commute and everything, right?
Yeah.
Because, like, space wise, cars are the biggest source of traffic. They require way more space than a motorcycle. So what I find most important, I think, is that if we want to reduce car dependence and so on, is that if we want to take any space from anywhere, we shouldn't take it from the motorcycles. we should be taking it from the cars. Like, if you're trying to do like a motor shift, because otherwise, if you take space from motorcycles, as I think some bicyclists seem to have suggested,
Yep.
the net effect of that is actually you're going to be pushing people into cars.
Yep.
Like, yeah, you're going to increase car usage, because I think right now the main reason why there are more motorcycles, you could say, is because of the dangers. Like, I think like it's pretty much one of the most unsafe modes of transportation. So people kind of like use the motorcycle for like, as long as they can in the maybe until they can afford a car or something like this. Like, they use the motorcycle first, save up, and then they maybe switch to a car. That's very standard in Malaysia. So what I would envision as a future is like maybe where we would have an extensive bicycle lane network. That would be perfect. You could go anywhere, bicycle highways, where going 25 kilometers across the city is no issue. Like that because Malaysia is actually really, really well, KL at least, it has been kind of like torn apart by highways. So for you, even if you want to walk, you can walk anywhere, because
Yep.
the highways have divided this whole city up. Like, even though some places will be relatively new, but I think this is too high a goalpost, because right now we don't have the critical mass as cyclists.
Yeah.
We don't have enough cyclists. Like, if you ask for a perfect bicycle network, you ask for segregated lanes on every road, like you would have in Europe. No one's going to listen to you, because they will say, "Who are we building this for?" The number of commuter cyclists in Malaysia, it's not zero, but it's really, really, really low.
Yeah.
And like, the main bicycle commuters are pretty much either some well-to-do people like us who are aware of greater issues like car dependence and so on, or the absolutely very, very poor, mostly like construction workers and foreign workers. Like, near my workplace,
Right.
I think the most people that's where I see the most cyclists, actually, near my workplace, where there's mostly factory workers.
Yes.
And generally these people don't have a political voice at all. So these are the main groups of cyclists you will have in Malaysia.
Yes.
And so if you were to try to push for a bicycle infrastructure based on these groups alone, I don't think you get really far, because like, if let's say you build a bicycle lane, like, I think they built the ones in KL and so on, and you have to build a full network. You can't just build a single loop or anything like that, because a single loop is not useful enough. It doesn't take you to enough origins and destinations, so you don't have a catchment area to catch enough people to use it. Because if you just build a single loop, it's mostly recreational. Okay, let's say you build this bicycle lane network, and most car drivers look at it and they see that it's mostly unused.
Yeah.
The impact of that is that it becomes political suicide for the authority figure or anybody who pushed for it, because they would say, you wasted a whole bunch of money on something that's never used.
Yep.
And that's why I think that if we try to push something that way, it's not going to be that easy.
Yeah.
So
but that's why, I fully agree with you, and that's why I think the federal highway is quite interesting, because there's already
it's a transition point for me, I feel.
There's a great infrastructure there, and if we have that link from all the way from Klang, Shah Alam, PJ, KL, if we can make that a safe bicycle option, because once you're in KL, I mean, I cycle in KL, then you're pretty okay. There's a lot of slow streets. But getting in and out of KL or through PJ and all that.
Oh yeah.
So actually, we sort of have the infrastructure, but I think at the moment it's just not a safe option, and it's not even a realistic option, because when you want to go back out of KL, then the lane is right. But
I don't cycle to KL on weekdays because of that.
But anyway, so back to my original question. So if we take the federal highway, and we had a bit of extra budget.
Oh yeah.
How could we use that to make it a realistic and safe option also for middle class Malaysians?
Oh yeah. So actually, that's exactly where I was going to go next. So what I find is that I think we need more of these. Like the federal highway right now is pretty much the only highway in Malaysia that has, well, besides Kesas, that has like a motorcycle lane of this quality. If you look at the other highways, so let's say NPE, LDP, all of these highways don't have anything like that.
Mm.
Like nothing. Sprint. Like most of these highways are just a pure wall.
Yep.
Like that to cyclists to pedestrians anyway. But the federal highway, even though it's imperfect because it has been chipped away at over time, like you have missing sections. So
Right.
even as imperfect as this, is actually the only thing right now that gives bicycles an option to get to Klang. And each of these it connects a whole bunch of different municipalities. So PJ, KL, Subang, Shah Alam, all these municipalities have their own bicycle lane network because
Right.
they have like green goal sustainability goals they're trying to meet and so on. So in my dream of dreams, I imagine that making this official pretty much, like connecting these different networks, like these islands separately together perfectly. One of the main safety barriers right now for the federal highway itself is that the exits are not good at all.
Mm.
Because the exits kind of put you in direct conflict with the fastest moving cars there are. Because
Oh.
the one I like to mention is Subang. So Subang also has its own bicycling network somewhere. I think they have a car free day and stuff like that. But let's say I'm in PJ and I wanted to cycle to Subang to take advantage of that, to check it out. If you try to exit the motorcycle lane
Yeah.
at Subang, it's really, really unpleasant. Because if you stay on the motorcycle lane, it's pretty safe. All
Yeah.
you have to do is keep left and that's it. But if the moment you try to exit and you come into conflict with the fastest moving cars, you're left in a really fast moving road.
I see.
And then and then that road exits into a really wide road, fast road too.
Ah,
And it will be a while before you get to a road that's small enough and safe enough to cycle on.
I see.
So for me, like the main thing that I think that needs to be taken care of, to kind of like instantly make the motorcycle lanes safer,
Yeah.
is to pretty much take care of the junctions, the entrances and exits.
Yes.
The coming onto the highway, onto the motorcycle lane highway, I would suggest, because we started off on the PJ bike network too, right?
Yes.
So we actually made use of the PJ bike lanes.
Yes.
But let's say you want to get on the PJ bike lanes to the motorcycle lane,
Yes.
as we did. I think one thing that would make it a lot safer is because the way we come in,
Yes.
we come in on the right, right? We don't come in on the left. So if we can come in on the left, which is a slow lane,
Yes.
then you find it easier to merge, I think.
Correct.
But I know that's a little bit of spatial geography and so on that makes it hard. And similarly, coming off the federal highway, you're kind of forced to coming off the motorcycle lane, you're forced to stick to the right where the fastest moving traffic is.
Right.
So, short of trying to switch our traffic, the direction of travel, and overtaking us, to like a right-hand drive or something.
Yeah.
The other way would be to give us a left exit lane. So, go maybe a lane that goes off to the left, where you get to you come off this way, and
Yes.
then you watch for passing motorcycles first. Once
Yes.
they finish crossing, then you cross and exit. So maybe an exit that looks like that. Okay, so that's on the motorcycle lane side of things.
Yeah.
On the road side of things, yeah, like I suggest, I would extend the motorcycle lane, bike lane. That's not a bike cycle lane, because the Malay translation for is actually long sikal. So you can let's call it a cycle lane, and you can do
Right.
both motorcycles and bicycles. So if you extend the cycle lane past the highway exit,
Yes.
and just so that the lane takes you right to the nearest local network,
Yes.
then you don't have to worry about traffic as much. So like the Subang Jaya exit is actually really fast and pleasant.
Yes.
But let's say you build a segregated lane over there,
Uh-huh.
and I'm sure that a lot of motorcyclists will also be happy to use that too because it's slower. Okay, yeah. Now conflict between motorcyclists and bicycles because that's another one interesting.
Yeah.
One of my experiences I found is that a lot of pedestrians also use motorcycle lane. So if near the convention center in Shah Alam, there's like a little tunnel that goes under a little bit of highway that I think the highway connects between like I think Kasas or something like this near the convention center. There is a tunnel.
Yes.
And lots of factory workers.
Yeah, we saw that.
Rely
Right.
on we saw that walking along the margins of the motorcycle lane.
Yeah.
What I would find, I think that's really important because this is one way that you can say the highways can be used to reconnect the city rather than tear it apart as it's done this whole time. Is I would actually place a separate pedestrian path.
Yes.
Parallel to the motorcycle lane. So something that people can walk along so that it becomes theoretically possible for you and I to walk to Klang, for example. Run it alongside the motorcycle lane.
Right.
So if you have so the good thing about this is that if you have really maybe non-confident cyclists, or just tie it because once you're on the motorcycle lane, there are very few rest stops except for a few rain shelters, which is quite good to have. Once you're on the motorcycle lane, you just have to keep going. You cannot stop at all. There's no rest points. There's no turn off lay-bys and so on. So what I would suggest to kind of cover as many competing users as possible is I would use the margins of the highway because I think on your videos you can see there's a bit of margins.
Yes.
I would build a separate pedestrian path. I would call it, and I would call it a pedestrian path on purpose because one thing I find is that many cyclists in Malaysia, because the general impression is like, oh, bicycles don't belong on the road, so most cyclists think, okay, yeah, we belong on the pedestrian paths, but because I'm influenced by Australia because I live in Australia. In Australia, the rules are if you are over the age of 12, you're not allowed to cycle on pedestrian paths. Like that's the rule. Like no, only kids are allowed to cycle on the pedestrian paths.
Right.
If you're adult, you cycle on the roads. So for me, I always kind of think we should look after the most vulnerable road users.
Yes.
So I also think that we should try to segregate fast-moving bicycles from. And actually nowadays, micro mobility vehicles like e-scooters.
Yes.
I would try to separate them from pedestrians because pedestrians shouldn't feel like they have to jump out the way when someone rings a bell. They belong to the path belongs to them.
Yeah.
So I would call this pedestrian path a pedestrian path.
Right.
And because it's called a pedestrian path, if you have a cyclist who wants to go fast, they shouldn't feel like they are entitled to this path at all. No, because this space is a slow space. Maybe someone who's going really slowly, maybe you say vulnerable kids. Yeah, they can. I think they can mix. It's okay for them to mix with pedestrians.
Yeah.
But if they want to cycle fast, they want to enjoy us just racing down the bicycle highway kind of thing. I would say you're much safer mixing with the motorcycles than mixing with pedestrians.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether we will ever get a micro mobility future or e-scooters. That's the in thing nowadays. I don't know whether we will ever get a future. Like I think Singapore struggled with that. They tried to they banned e-scooters actually from both the roads and the pedestrian paths because there was an incident where an e-scooter knocked an elderly woman down, something like that.
Yeah.
So, but they decided to build a separate network. They call a PCN network, like a connector network.
Yes.
And it's only on those PCN networks that e-scooters are allowed. Bicycles are allowed on the roads and the PCN networks, but e-scooters are allowed on the PCN networks. In Malaysia, we happen to have a backbone of this PCN network already. We don't have to build one from scratch. And for me, that is the federal highway motorcycle lane.
Yes.
So if we can think of it in a similar way, I think we have a ready-made scooter lane for the future already, like micro-mobility lane for the future.
I agree.
That we can expand on. Rather than having a single line, we can turn into a full network. Fix up the LDP, for example, or the other highways that are impossible to cycle on right now.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's my controversial stance that I think only I hold. For me, it's like don't I wouldn't try to discourage people from motorcycling, because I feel like if doing that is counterproductive to trying to reduce car dependency,
Yeah.
because you're going to push them to cars. And nobody seems to stick up for motorcyclists in Malaysia. The car drivers are against them, the bicyclists are against them. Everybody seems to be against them.
Yeah.
And for me, it doesn't make sense, because they have much lower impact on traffic and what emissions and everything than cars, because they're not lugging in all the extra weight of the metal and everything behind them.
Yeah.
So for me, I think it's not. We actually should try to and maybe one day, if you ask me, I think it's much easier to imagine a motorcyclist shifting to an e-bikes shifting to bicycles than a car driver shifting straight to e-bikes and bicycles, because I don't know whether it's a stereotype or not, but car drivers are used to air conditioning and having a little bubble around them, but motorcyclists are used to dealing with weather and getting wet. So yeah. So if you want to imagine a more bicycle heavy Malaysia, I think motorcyclists are our allies, not someone to work against or anything.
Yeah, I think so.
Because we have the same interest. Yeah, we want to stay safe from the 1-ton vehicles around us.
Yes. You also said, because you're basically saying we should work with the existing bicycle lane along the federal highway, but you also at one point said we should take space from the cars. So is that also something you envision? I mean, it won't be tomorrow, but let's say that the leftmost car lane on the federal highway, let's say, is only for motorbikes, for example.
For example, remember when I mentioned the exit, the Subang Jaya exit?
Yeah.
So right now, as it is, what it does is there's only a car exit lane, few lanes of car traffic that exits, right. And then the motorcyclists that want to enter Subang Jaya would exit the motorcycle lane and enter Subang Jaya on the car lanes. Yeah. So what I would imagine is taking the leftmost bit of it and just extending the motorcycle lane onwards, so that you have, because when we ride on motorcycle lane, you can have two lanes, which is a left lane and a passing lane. You can have both on less than one lane of car, less in the width of less than one lane of car lane.
Yeah.
Sorry, right. I'm not articulating. It's not that wide. So for me, you can take maybe it's three quarters of a car lane.
Yeah.
3/4 of a car lane gives you 2 lanes of motorcycles, and for me that's a good exchange to have. And if you really wanted to maintain the same number of car lanes, you can do a bit of road diving and narrow a bit lane widths so that people slow down a bit on the exits. Yes. You don't want them to be racing off. Because I think the speed limits officially changed to 60 kilometers an hour, the moment you exit the highway.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like it, right? Because if the way is clear, people will just continue on at highway speeds when they're exiting the highway, because the road is designed for that. The road is designed for you to run it. I know the federal highways has a speed limit of 80 kilometers an hour, I think, officially. Mm-hmm. Nobody travels at 80 kilometers an hour on the federal highway. Everyone's traveling at 110. Yes. Precisely because of the road design. The road design has lanes wide enough and straight enough that it's easy for you to go 110. So the build design informs you tells you to travel 110 kilometers an hour. And the same thing is happening on the exits too. They're going just as fast. So if you want people to slow down, you could you don't have to. It doesn't have to be that wide.
That's true. I was thinking whether we could work with Justin from the Bicycle Commute Malaysia, because he's quite good at illustrating some of these solutions you are talking about in these kind of 3D images of the city, and make some maps, and it could be something we could work with him and his team to produce maybe a suggestion book for reforming the federal highway, because I think it makes so much sense, and because so many people travel along the federal highway, if we can make cycling a realistic option for the ordinary Malaysian, then we'll suddenly see a lot more cyclists, both in PJ and KL and all the cities along the way. And then once you have the cyclists, the city council, which will be much more agreeable to then start building a better infrastructure in the local the city councils. So I think, to me, the federal highway, with that fantastic connectivity of the capital of Malaysia, I see it as sort of a green straw that can pull environmentally friendly cyclists in and out of the city, and be a catalyst for this urban bicycle transformation that we need. And it can be done without much investment because the infrastructure is already there. We just need to polish it a bit at the fringes
and like repair the bits that are missing too.
Yeah.
I think that's something that could be explored too, because it is like you say, it's a low hanging fruit, and like we have like a legacy backbone thing that that could be built right off of. I think one of the biggest barriers probably would be just a public reaction in Malaysia. Like I think it feels like nobody can really imagine. Imagine an alternative, I guess. And then
that's why we're doing this video, right? We are showing that it can be cycled. It's quite nice, and I think with these illustrations from Bike Commute Malaysia, people don't have to imagine it; they can see it. We can illustrate it how it could be, right? And it's so cheap to do compared to building a new highway, right? That's the alternative.
I think the other thing they did consider at one point was like run a BRT through the middle of the federal highway, but I think politically it would be really, really hard to implement because the car drivers would say like you're taking away one lane of traffic each way too. But this one here, I guess it would be mostly invisible, I think, to car drivers too. And hopefully some of them choose to switch at some point. Like for me, I guess the main point is, at the same time, that's why I also take great pains to say it too. At the same time, I think it's really important not to displace motorcycles at the same time. Because I think many things, like for example, the River of Life. Before it was the River of Life, it used to be the KL, like I think it used to be called the KL PJ Highway or something like that. The bicycle highway, KL PJ bicycle highway. And what it was a section of motorcycle lane that was closed off to traffic, and then turned into a bicycle highway, like with little modifications. The original infrastructure was there. And actually, I would argue that was a lot more bikeable then than it is now after all the upgrades, because the highway infrastructure was left intact, so it was quite smooth. And there weren't any bollards and stuff in the way too. So like you're going on smooth tar roads and so on. But what the net effect of that is that if you are a motorcyclist who used to rely on that stretch of the highway motorcycle lane to go to say breakfields and so on, that road was suddenly gone. And then you have to mix with car traffic. So like because like I said, my concern like is that most motorcyclists are commuters, like commuter travelers and so on. I feel like if we do something like this, we shouldn't repeat what we did at with the River of Life. Because you doing this, like especially since we in Malaysia, I think they say that in terms of road traffic deaths and so on, the highest mortality rates are like among motorcyclists. So like I mentioned just now, the fastest and the most foolhardy motorcyclists are already taking the car lane because they consider the motorcycle lane too slow. Like it's full of other motorcyclists that are going slowly, the uncles and aunties and parents of kids. The slow ones are the ones that choose to use motorcycling anyway. So for me, like I would feel like it would be like a horrible thing, I guess, if like in the idea suggested ended up pushing the most vulnerable motorcycle users onto the car highway because we chose to kick them out to replace them with a bicycle lane. And that's why I always take pain to say, like I think we can find a way to make it work so that everybody can use it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
maybe the only way to make it work is to implement a speed limit. Like let's say if you want to use a motorcycle lane, we don't run at 60 kilometers an hour. That's just like a lot of the old uncles I mentioned. They're running way slower than that. Especially they're on really old rickety bikes and so on.
Yeah.
So let's say we drop the speed limit to like maybe 40 or 30 kilometers an hour, a speed that you can say that is safe enough for a bicycle to cycle alongside with. Then I think you could have a unified solution that everybody can work with.
Yes.
Like something like that. Because,
but I think actually, I think your biggest team player here is actually the city of Kuala Lumpur, because if you look in their official plans, they say we have to have a huge modal shift. So by 2040, only 30% of the trips should be done by car. So so converting, let's say, the outermost lane of the federal highway to other modes of transport like motorbikes or cycling or other is actually very much in line with the general direction. At least if you follow the official policy. I know in such a car-dominated society like Malaysia, it's difficult to imagine that we could go in that direction, but other cities have done this. I mean, I'm from Copenhagen, that used to be completely car.
Nice place.
And we did it. Of course, it's a different climate, right? But it can be done. It's not rocket science. So
I think one thing, at least in this context, is that you kind of have to mix a couple of different governing bodies, just municipalities, the governing bodies. Like I think KL seems to be pretty serious about it, and individually, like MBPJ, Shah Alam, like MBSA, Subang, like individually, they seem to be interested in doing their own little thing with bike lanes and so on. But I think if they could kind of like find a way to try to say, let's have an integrated Klang Valley, like bicycle network, I think that is something that will go a ways, because most people are traveling outside the borders of these like local councils too. So if anything, we should have they should have a connected network. They like a regional standard rather than just having their own little thing here and there.
Of course, I mean, like they do for the highways, right? That cut through different councils. So okay, but I think maybe we leave it here, because I think the video
it's running late now.
is only about an hour long, and I think the interview is almost longer than our ride now. That's good. Thanks for.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks for a good discussion.
Thanks for joining me too.
And any final things you wanted to say in this interview, or should we just leave it here?
I think actually, just as a final point, a lot of people like to say, oh, Malaysia's hot, Malaysia's wet, but it wasn't too long ago when our whole society was cycling. Like that was the main way that people were around, and the main reason why people are not cycling now, it isn't the weather, safety. There isn't. It's not if you could cycle the distance to your local shops and so on, I think if you could do it safely, you didn't have to worry about getting hit or anything like that, I think you would do it, because you don't have to worry about parking as much. Like a bike doesn't occupy as much space as a car, so you can fit 10 or 20 bikes or whatever in the space that one car would normally fit. And I think just doing this alone would give us a nice little kind of small town village feel that I think a lot of people kind of imagine is nice in a European country. But over here, what you have instead is shops ringed by whole lot of car park and roads and so on, and you kind of lose that little local touch. But I think it's just imagining a nicer place.
I fully agree, and I mean, I work in the building sector, so whenever you see a new building project presented, the architect will have these nice 3D renderings of the buildings, and then the streets will always be very vibrant, right? You will have people walking, maybe cycling. But in reality, you get to these big podiums, right? You have 5 stories tall, and at street level, you are just entering into a huge car park podium, and that's not.
Yeah, I think that's one thing. Half sometimes not half, but if you look around all the new developments, it seems like a third of the height of the building or something is just car parking.
Correct.
Imagine how much cheaper and lower the buildings can be, like, or maybe how many more apartments you could fit, rather if you didn't have to house all these cars at the same time too.
Yeah, and that doesn't make a very vibrant city when you have these huge podiums. So I think again, I mean, KL wants to be one of the most livable cities in the world, and one of the answers to that is to reduce car traffic because they take up so much space, they pollute, they're noisy, and they don't make for a conducive city environment. So.
Yeah, and I think no one's going to say that what driving in bumper to bumper traffic is fun. No one's going to say that because that is not fun at all. I sometimes if I'm driving and I'm stuck in bumper to bumper traffic, sometimes I look out at the motorcycle lane and I say, like, I really wish I cycled today.
Yes, and I can also see it when I cycle in a heavy jam, and then when I sort of zoom past on my bicycle,
Oh yeah.
sometimes I just hear people honk like, they're so frustrated. They're sitting in their expensive car, and this cheap cyclist is just not zooming past, not being
Yeah.
by the traffic, right? So it is very. I mean, I think that's also what happened in Denmark. People just demanded for something better, not sitting in these endless traffic queues, having a terrible, I mean, not a nice city, not safe for kids as well to get around. That was a big, I mean, safety for kids was a big driving factor in reprioritizing how we did the traffic planning. And then
I think how the Dutch, that's what happened to the Dutch, yeah, because it was all kids, the safety kids that drove the cycling movement there. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. I wanted to. Wait, I wanted to one. Wait. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Never mind. I lost my train of thoughts.
No problem. But Eugene, thanks so much for this interview. I hope our ride and our conversation can inspire other people to cycle, and also the city planners and the city councils to hopefully take up some of our good ideas on.
And hopefully it's not just us, like, and more people will choose to cycle instead of drive. You save money. It's good for your health.
It's
and
very
if enough people do it, the city becomes a nicer place.
Yeah, the health benefit is huge, right? So if you look at the economics, I mean, purely for economic reasons, you should do it. But that requires that we look across different sectors. So that's another one of my projects, to try to do such a study, so we actually get some economic figures on this, because once it becomes a health benefit and we can save lives, that gives it a whole other priority from the planners and the politicians. So, but I think we leave that for a subsequent video.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay.
And we'll stay in touch. Drive safe, or cycle safe, I should say.
All right, ride safe.
Thanks.
belakang sana kanan. Ambulans kan? Kan ambulans kan? Tapi yang belakang Ah, 12 ni belakang ni. Boleh.
Plastic bos?
No thanks.
Sorry, offline.
Was it 10 ringgit?
Yes.
Semua ni.
Belakang apa?
Biar dulu.
Bos.
Yeah, fine, right?
50.
Okay, thank you.